funny thing, the car was purchased on eBay in England. It was shipped to Baltimore, and it was a one-off based on the Citroën Diane. And I have to tell you that he also has been the recipient of a Carlisle Elite Award in the past.
I will tell you that I saw them put that up on two-wheelers.
and his daughter came with him the whole way from Richmond, Virginia, and she slept for an hour and a half on the way here in the passenger seat of the car.
And he told his wife that. She said she slept in that thing.
All right, now this car here, I'm going to have to struggle to tell you about. I'm sure most of you know this car is owned by me. I live a whopping 15 miles from here. I got started in Citroën when I was 15 years old. My uncle owned a Citroën dealership about 25 miles from here, and I worked there for 24 years. And then at that time I switched gears and I went into business for myself. Been doing that for 19 years. More interestingly, the car was originally sold new in Rouen, and I am the third owner of the car. The gentleman that I bought it from was working for a company in France, in Rouen, in the 60s. He was being given a certain amount of money per week to rent a car. And he pocketed that money and bought the Citroën from the original owner, drove it for several years, brought it back to the States in 1968. The car sat until the early 80s. It was stored in a barn, which was set on fire by an arsonist. So when I purchased the car from him in 1983, the car had pretty much been burned. All the body lid was melted out of it. The one seat was burned. And I restored it along with the help of my brother, my dad, some other people in about a year. And it was done in 1984, which happened to be the 50th anniversary of the traction bomb. I've been lucky enough to win the Carlisle Elite Award, and I also was chosen as a Winner's Circle winner. And I'll explain that to everyone. The Winner's Circle tomorrow, they will announce the Winner's Circle winners, and what they do is, again, Carlisle Events picks their favorite car from each country, and that person is given a nice jacket, a hat, and is honored as the best car of that country. So I'm very proud to have won that. There was one other thing I wanted to say about this car, and I forget what it was, so we'll move on. Does anybody have any questions?
Beautiful car, Brad.
Yes, it is.
Well, then I'm going to introduce you before you say it. Okay, well, we're going to have another ghost car, but I want to make sure everyone meets George Lois. He was our host last night for dinner. George has been involved in Citroëns about as long as I have been, or maybe longer. I was 15 years old when I started working at the dealership, and I met George probably a year or two later because he was driving DS's from the time he was in high school. And George has never lost his love of Citroëns. He owns quite a few. The beautiful red DS21, I think it's a 67, is George's, and he can be very proud of it. It's a beautiful car. And George, thank you for taking your time
to
be here with us today.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have to go because I don't want to lose my car.
Have fun.
That's my wife.
Okay. Have fun, George.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'd like to introduce you to Rich Bizarre. Rich lives in Watkins Glen, New York, where him and his wife own a bed and breakfast. And Rich previously lived in Maryland when he owned this car. The car's a 53 Traction Avant 11 Normal, and he's owned it for 18 years. And his comments are, this poor Citroën has survived my clumsy mechanical work for 18 years now. It's had at least 5 owners and still runs great. And I'll comment that I think I saw one of the previous owners here today. Russ Spears, I think, was the immediate prior owner of the car, and I saw him this afternoon. So, does anyone have any questions for Rich?
How's it been breakfast business?
If you're in Watkins Glen, New York, look them up, man or bed and breakfast. Rich, thank you very much. Come on over, Polly. You don't want in the picture? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to introduce you to Ken Batch. And his wife Polly is sort of hiding in the background over there. And Ken says that this is Polly's car. Ken and Polly live in Reading. I think they've lived there for about 40 years now. Ken, I think, is one of the most determined and longest Citroën owning people that I know. A lot of us have a Citroën and we drive it and we have fun with it. Ken and Polly drove nothing but Citroëns up until 8 years ago. About 8 years ago, their only cars were Citroëns and they drove them every day. That deserves a round of applause. This car is their 10th Citroën that they've owned. The total mileage that Ken and Polly have driven in all of their cars is about 23,000 miles short of 1 million miles in Citroën. Between 1964 and 2004, they only owned Citroëns, no other brand of car. And I have to tell you that this car is one that I previously serviced when I worked at the dealership many, many years ago. Ken and Polly, do you have any questions for them?
That's a lot of fun.
280,000. Wow.
280.
We're the second owner, and it had about 80,000 in 1980.
Wow.
Has the engine ever been rebuilt? Once, but it's been a long, long time ago. It was done at the Delaware shop.
Wow.
That was probably in the mid-80s, if I remember right.
Holy cow.
And Ken and Polly are actually considering moving from their present home into another venue. We wish them well with that. Polly is well known because she's a gardener, right, Polly? Sort of. I've been to their home and I know she's a gardener. It's always very pretty. So, anyone else have a question? If not, congratulations. I don't think anybody else here is going to say they've been as hooked on Citroën as Ken and Polly. I gotta go over here because those guys hiding back there ain't getting out of this. All right, this car is owned by Peter Bandy. His hometown is Taylor, Michigan, and he has owned this car since 1980. He also owns a really nice 68 DS and also a 52 Traction Avant that he's in the process of restoring. And he didn't put anything down, so guess what? I know that Peter is retired from Ford Motor Company, where he worked for a few years. How many?
25.
25 years, and he is an upholstery guru. There's more than one car that's here that has had the upholstery either repaired or made by Peter. He's a very busy guy, but he does some outstanding work. And then there's two guys sitting back here that never filled a form out. Peter Bandy, wave your arm. Or Gabe, I'm sorry. Gabe Dave and Steve, and they're longtime Citroën owners too. So they didn't fill out a form, but made sure that you know who they are. And I know that they own between them a couple of DS's and maybe a couple old sleeve engine cars. And so anyhow, who has a question for Peter?
How many miles?
This one?
Yeah.
68,000.
So was this car sold in Michigan?
It was sold in, I guess it was sold in Canada.
Oh, really?
In Windsor. And then they brought it to Detroit. And I'm the third owner on this one myself.
Very pretty car.
Thank
Very
you.
pretty car. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Change my perception.
Okay, Sean Heenan, where are you at? Sean, come on over. I'd like to introduce you to Sean Heenan. Sean Heenan's the whole way from Dansville, Michigan. That's not just a hop, a skip, and a jump, right? He's the car's an '87 CX Prestige. He's owned it for 4 years. He also has a '69 DS21, a '70 DS21 with fuel injection, and an '87 CX wagon. The car is a 1987 CX CINA import, which I believe is the one from Georgia. Okay, it's a daily driver of his, and it's got 250,000 kilometers on it. As far as Sean, I believe, still works as a mechanic, working on all kinds of imported cars. Is that correct? And is very knowledgeable of the cars, very dedicated to Citroën. Who has a question for you? How dependable has this car been if it's your daily driver?
Very.
You had any problems? Never
I've done a lot of work to it.
You can put winter tires on it in the winter?
No, I don't drive in the winter, but
No.
spring, summer, fall.
Nothing that this was in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
What
Just
the-
got a movie called The Double.
How the
The
double?
double?
Right?
No, well, it was in there. But
Oh,
this
you're a
one was.
movie star too, huh?
We got cars, movie star cars.
All right, great.
My black one was in the last one that Whitney Houston was in there, the Sparkle
All right.
in Detroit.
Does anybody else have any questions? Congratulations on the car.
Carter's in trouble because he didn't fill one out.
Oh my gosh, where's he at?
Just left.
He just left. He's camera shy. Dave, help me out. Tell me what you know about this car. Carter, Willie, and Gabrielle own this car. It's a 61 DS19. I think you'll find it's a very, very original car. And I'm not, how long have they owned it? Do you know?
I think 10 years maybe.
10 years?
Imported it from France.
Imported from France. So, camera shy, but he's somewhere here.
He's not far away. And he's Dave's #1.
Oh, and he also is Dave's #1 mechanic.
Thank you.
Come on over, Judy. This is Judy Reiter. How do you say it? Reiter. I had it right the first time. We all know Judy. She's been around for 10 years, she says. Longer than that. 15 years. She's from Silver Springs, Maryland. She also owns a 2CV sedan. Judy's an oncology nurse at the National Institute of Health and an avid flower and vegetable gardener. She lived in France for 20 years, and that is where she developed a love for 2CVs. And now she has a love for people that own Citroëns, right? This car was brought into the U.S. by importer Mark Hyman for a woman with a high-end shoe shop in New England. She sold it because she felt it was underpowered. It turned out that only one cylinder was working because the plug wire was disconnected. She bought it, Les Woods fixed the cylinder, and the rest is history.
It's actually a Feldsport.
Oh, Feldsport.
Okay.
of you also know, if you've been around for a while, Judy was previously the president of the Citroën Car Club of North America, which she held a couple terms. She's been very instrumental in keeping people coming to Carlisle over the years, and we appreciate that. Who has a question for her?
What is the translation of the sign on the side of the?
It's delivery service, and Le Campagnard means country girl.
Oh, is it a restaurant?
That's me.
Oh, okay.
That's me.
Oh, okay. So it's custom.
Did you have
Not
that?
really.
Did you have that put on it, or was it on?
I bought it that way.
It was bought
okay.
that
But I think it fits.
It fits. It was destiny. How many miles have you driven on it to Citroën meets all
Well,
over
it
the
just turned over.
100,000 kilometers?
Yeah.
Well, you have
But
a
I
new car
didn't-
now.
Yeah, but when I got it, there was probably 60,000.
Kind of doubt that was the first 100,000
Oh.
kilometers.
You never know. You never know.
Again, it's all about the miles per gallon, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations
Okay.
on your car.
Thank you.
I didn't put down a whole lot.
Don't worry, he'll fill it.
All right.
I'd like to introduce you to Gene Lenoche. He's from Williamsburg, Virginia.
Currently. A lot
Currently.
of other places.
He's owned this car for 15 years. It's a 2CV Charleston. He's crossed the United States coast to coast in this car. Is that
This
correct?
car,
10,000 miles with his wife with him. That's
Yep.
really saying something.
she deserves a round of applause.
And the interesting thing about the car is that he restored it himself.
Yeah,
And
I did. I have done most of the work on it. I have another gray and dark gray Charleston in Europe that has been completely redone with a galvanized chassis and new engine, new everything.
Now I have a question for
And-
you. How did you get interested in Citroën?
I'm going to tell you the story. I spent my childhood summers on a farm in Brittany. All right, instead of being sent to camp, my folks would send me there and learn how to milk cows and do some other stuff. And one of the people that we knew quite well, that my father had grown up in the same village, was the agricultural minister. And he had a 2CV, and he must have weighed 300 pounds. And he would come and pick me up, and he said, "Come on, I want to show you something. Your father helped me plant this, or do this, or do that." And I remember going down this cow path with wheel ruts, with one side, actually he put my side on the downside, and put the 300 pounds on the other, and he said, "Don't worry, we'll get out." And that was an old suicide door. It was like a 1949 or 52 car, all right?
Wow.
And it was like one of those things. We went back. I inherited the farm, and this car sat for almost 4 years in the barn on the property. And then I said, "Well, why don't I bring it back?"
Great. How many miles have you put on it since you restored
It's
it?
about to turn 300,000
Wow.
kilometers.
Wow. Great. Great. Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah. How do you have any problems passing inspection with that mooring?
It doesn't pass inspection because it's got antique plates.
Does the front end come off the ground when you blow it off?
No, but I lose about 5 miles an hour.
You asked for it. All right. Nice to see. Looking for Pete. There's Pete. It's Connie, come on up. I'd like to introduce Pete and Connie Lee from Baltimore, Maryland. When I was a young guy just starting to work on Citroëns, I remember Pete and Connie coming, especially Pete, I think, driving from Baltimore on a regular basis to get maintenance done on the car when it was needed, and got to know them quite well. They've owned this car for 28 years. and they have a 1970 wagon and a 1969 wagon also. Pete is a retired engineer, and he's owned Citroën since 1967. And Connie is retired, I think, now from the real estate business, which I believe was a very nice fit for you. I think you did well with it. Pete wrote about this car that he has driven it 250,000 miles since 1985. Now, I have a little bit of input on that because I remember that Pete came to the dealership where I was working, and I think you picked this chassis out. It was one that the dealership owned, is that correct? Okay, he came with a car that was not in very good shape, and instead of fixing that, Red Dellinger sold him this car, and I remember putting this car back together and rebuilding the engine, etc. That was 250,000 miles ago. That's pretty impressive, Pete. That's pretty great. And Pete, over the years, I think you've done probably 99% of the maintenance has been done yourself. Is that right? So it's again, they long time Citroën owners, and I think they can be very proud of that. They were also, was it about a year ago? They were in sports and exotic cars, I think, Hemmings. They have a copy of it in the back. This car was featured as one of their daily drivable dreams or something like that. So, daily drivers. So, does anyone have a question for Pete and Connie?
When are you going to buy another one?
Do you have any idea what kind of gas mileage you averaged over those 250,000 miles? And what was the longest trip you ever made in the car?
I think the furthest we went was up to Lubeck, Maine.
Great. How long ago has that been? A few years.